Welcome to Up Close and Empowered with host Sonna Johns. Over the next hour, you'll hear from Sonna and her guests on how you can become more empowered through life's most challenging situations. Sonna's journey through her own transformation has inspired her to awaken you to your divine power.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonna Johns with Up Close and Empowered. And my intention today here is to awaken you to your true power and inspire you to lead a more empowered life. So thank you so much for being here and being on my very first show and taking time out to listen, during your busy day. So I wanted to begin by saying why I decided to do this show, because I have had this in my head for a long time. I wanted to have an authentic platform to share knowledge and wisdom that has not only helped me on my journey, my healing journey, but also the guests that you'll be hearing from as well. So today we are going to be talking about empowerment, and empowerment can be many different things. But to me, and I'm going to set the precedence right now with all of my shows moving forward, this is the empowerment that starts within. So when I think about empowerment, it's all about our inner world, because ultimately it creates our outer world. And it's about building a relationship to self and being conscious and confident about our ability to listen and be self-aware of our body, what it's saying, our mind, our intuition, and our spirit, and seeing all the difficulties that we endure, the pain, the trauma, the heartbreak, the disappointments, the rejection, and the list goes on, of course. But they're all opportunities to learn valuable life lessons and to grow, and to look at it from a perspective of life is not happening to us, but rather for us. Empowerment to me at its core is really connecting to your authenticity or the true nature of who you are. And it's taking the lead in your life and becoming your highest self or a higher version of yourself. Now, I'm going to stop right here because I want to make sure that everybody understands that when I reference highest self or become your highest self, live your best life, this is all relative, because my highest self may not be your highest self. Somebody else's success may not be your success. So everybody has what's ever authentic to them, and it's really what's ever true to you. But the point is that we're all learning and growing. We're all on our own time frame, and we're learning the lessons as we go on in our path in life. So how did my journey begin? I wanted to tell you just a little bit about me before we really get started today. I'm super excited. I have a great guest here, and I'll be sharing that in a minute. But so what got me here today? So over the years, I have gone off path more than a few times. And, it's, how it is. You have the lessons, you make the mistakes, and then, you don't really realize it at the time until you get a bit older and wiser. But, at the time, like, people throughout my life thought my life was perfect. They'd look at the external and they'd say, oh, she's, I'm not saying everybody, but there were people that thought my life was perfect. And the reality is that we are all fighting our own private battles. And I'm sure that most of you listening out there would agree. Everybody has something. Like, we all have unhealthy things that were, patterns we were involved in, or relationships. And that's really where I fall into. It wasn't just the unhealthy patterns throughout my life, but it was also the continual people pleasing, self betrayal, and definitely minimizing myself to please others. And this really wasn't me, because I kind of know my power, but I made myself small so that other people would accept me. And when we do this, we only limit ourselves. And what happens is you become more and more disconnected. And that's what happened. I became more and more disconnected to myself and from my soul. And then one day, a lot of things were kind of adding up, and I knew that something had to change. And it did. I did a complete 180, and I made a commitment to regain my power and get healthy. And that meant healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And I will admit that it took me a long time to figure it out. After a lot of pain and regret and beating myself up, I finally got it. I finally got it. And sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. I realized that that I realized that these were just tough lessons that I had to learn. And I learned this as I got older and wiser, that this was just part of my path. It was part of my life lesson. Because one of the things that I really learned is that our soul knows when we're ready to go to the next level. It knows when we're ready to learn more. And in some cases, move on from a certain situation. And is it scary? Yeah. I mean, it's really scary because you have to be really courageous, and courage is about being scared to death but stepping into the unknown anyway and doing it anyway. And it's really tough because so many of us are used to the familiar. So it's got to get to a point where you really know that you have to make a change. And I could feel it. I could I could sense it. It's just that I didn't listen to my intuition. The signs were always there throughout my life. I mean, this isn't just recent, this is throughout my life. I look back and I think of the times where that was a sign, that was a sign, that person was a sign for me, and I didn't listen. And so, through all of this, it taught me my biggest life lesson, and that is self love. So giving up was not an option for me, and nor was it an option for any of the guests that you'll be hearing from on my shows. I will say that I could not have done it without the help of certain people that were put on my path, and some of them are listening right now. And I will say that I would not be here sitting right now talking to all of you had I not had certain people appear on my path and help me and guide me and encourage me and believe in me. So I am truly grateful beyond words. And I don't know, you ever get so grateful that you can cry? And I'm not a crier. Most people that know me, I am not a crier. And listen, crying is really good because it's a great release. It's a great way to heal. But I don't really cry that much. But I do cry when I think of all the people that have helped me and how hard the journey was. So I am just so grateful to be here today. So, with that, we are going to talk to someone who has helped me again through one of my most difficult times, specifically when I needed to set boundaries. It was really hard for me. I was in a very tough situation, and she appeared, met her through a friend, was inquiring with her about somebody else in my family, and we just connected. And then that was it. And she has taught me so much. We have learned from each other, but I will tell you, she is amazing when it comes to boundaries. She's going to be talking today about the importance of setting boundaries and how it is one of the major pillars of self love and personal empowerment. And I thought that this would be the perfect topic to kick off this series because let's face it, most of us probably could step up our boundary practice a bit, right? Her name is Robin Breckenridge. She is a life and relationship coach with a passion for empowering individuals to enhance their personal and professional relationships. Her background in behavioral education and close to 10 years of coaching has allowed her to help hundreds. Let me tell you, it's thousands. No way it's in the hundreds. She's helped thousands of people heal from past traumas and break unhealthy patterns. Robin has a practical yet very empathic style, but she can be firm, drawing from her own personal experience and knowledge to guide her clients. She's helped people from all walks of life transform their relationships and lead a more empowered, fulfilled life. Please welcome Robin Breckenridge to the show. Thank you for being here, Robin.
Thank you for having me. And can we get like a collective amen for that intro? Because
I thought about it.
yes,
It had to be in my heart. It had to be in my heart, you know.
what a beautiful way to allow me to be in my heart for this segment. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. This is really special for you to be here on my first show because I know your values and your priorities. I know your work, and I know you as a person, and I'm just really honored to have you here today. And what I'd like to start off with is just you telling us whatever you want us to know about yourself. Maybe, how you began, why you're here right now, or how you got to where you are right now, whatever you would like to share.
Sure. Well, I know we have limited time, so I'll kind of keep it
Mhm.
as brief as possible. But I think where I'll start is that even though I teach this and I've been doing it for a long time, I'm a student as well. So whenever I teach boundaries, I always let people know I don't teach boundaries, or I'm not considered an expert in boundaries because it's easy or I'm good at it. It's been extremely hard. In fact, at one point in my life, I was horrific at it, and I had to work so hard at it that I acquired the skill set. So I just want to say that first and foremost, that like this is a lifelong practice. But where my journey started, I can go all the way back to acknowledging a hurt little girl in me that I've been carrying for most of my life, that really didn't know how to protect and honor myself in my relationships. Um, in my journey, I found myself in an abusive relationship in my early 20s. I had unhealthy relationships or unhealthy dynamics in my relationships in my family, in work situations, and friendships, which I think is true for most people because relationships
Mhm.
can be challenging, and we're bringing a lot of our wounding and our patterns. And basically, I just kind of got to a sink or swim moment in my life where I just went, I can't continue on the way that I am, which was really the way that I was relating to myself. Like I did not know how to get my needs met and how to honor myself in relationships. And I was outsourcing it through people that weren't able to validate that. And I wasn't able to practice healthy relating with them. And so I finally just kind of hit this place where it was like, all right, I can't continue this way. And I think the universe lovingly nudged me into shifting my patterns and approaching life and my relationship with myself and others in a different way. And
Mhm.
so through that journey, I was able to find tools and processes and things that helped. And then really it shifted the trajectory of my life. And now I get to share that with others every single day. And I feel beyond blessed that I, through my own awakening, was able to hold a space for others to wake up to.
Mhm. Beautiful. I'm curious about what time in your life that you pivoted, that you actually woke up and said, no more. Like about what was the pivotal moment and about how old roughly were you?
Roughly, I was like in my early 30s. I had, I've always been someone who's fascinated by this type of work. So I joke that I read every self-help book and went to every You Can Heal Your Life weekend. Unfortunately, I would come
Mhm.
back to the same patterns and responses and reactions. What ended up happening was kind of a perfect storm. I had a few relationships no longer enable me, kind of blow up in my face, and it culminated to this place where I knew that I could not continue on the way that I was. And so, thankfully, which is something I would drive home today and anything that we talk about, like, this is not something you can do alone.
Mm-mm.
We
No
need
way.
someone who, we need good, healthy support. And I was able to find that, and I was able to find the right support therapeutically that pointed me more towards shifting my behavior and a little bit less on the origin, which I'm not putting that down in any way. But at that particular time in my life, I kind of knew the origin of where my
Mhm.
challenges were coming from or my patterns, but I did not know how to shift them behaviorally. And
Mhm.
coming across that information absolutely changed my life.
And how has it changed your life? Like, did you see the results right away? Or were you starting? I mean, I guess because I feel like setting boundaries is so important in empowerment, like really feeling good. It's self-love, it's feeling confident, it's getting your confidence to really do what's right for you, right? So were you feeling that as you initially stepped in? I want people to know, like, if they start to begin really taking care of themselves and getting into self-love practices and really setting boundaries, are they going to start to feel a difference?
I think so. I think if you're getting the right support in the right direction, absolutely. I do think we have to highlight that the first step in change is awareness. So a lot of times, even with
Mhm.
boundary work, you kind of have to look around your life and let those things come to the surface and see them, or see where these behaviors are in your life, and then implement the change. But absolutely, I mean, specifically speaking, boundary work changed my life. It's one
Mhm.
of the biggest contributors to the amount of peace, self-love, and empowerment that I have on board currently. And I do think it's easily one of the best ways to shift into your power and stay in your own personal power.
Right. And can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because, You say it gives you the inner peace. It also allows you to stay grounded in self-awareness. So talk about that a little bit more so that people understand how that really works in our body.
Sure. I mean, I think that our number one responsibility in life is to keep ourselves emotionally safe. If we can keep ourselves emotionally safe, the rest of the things in our life will clean and clear up. Um, I personally think that boundaries kind of fall into three different buckets. Like one, they are parameters. It says, "Hey, this is where I end and you begin." Right.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
other is it adjusts access to you, which when we're not connected with our worth and our power, we tend to give a lot of access to ourselves, to our feelings, to our information. And then it also allows you to set limits. And that's why having someone to help you through this work is really important because sometimes we're not even aware of our limits. I
Hmm.
call limits sometimes our emotional allergies. Like we all have emotional and relational limits. When you know them, like, oh, I'm allergic to judgment, I'm allergic to unavailability. Then
Right.
when it's presented to you, when we know, oh, I need a limit here. So knowing those things, that one, where you end and someone begins, that you are able to set limits in your life, even if someone has given to you or you love them very deeply or, whatever the case is. And then also knowing that you have the ability to adjust the access that people have to you.
Right. And
And
that's where the empowerment comes in
I
too,
was
because
going to say,
you're becoming aware and you can like turn that level up or turn that level down. You know you just know what to do.
absolutely, because,
Mhm.
being victimized by people, I'm not trying to ever say that people aren't genuinely victimized. But when you stay in the energy of being a victim, you
Mhm.
suffer. I
Yeah.
know this for a fact from my own life and from working with so many
Yeah.
people. So,
Mhm.
whenever that is presented to us, we have the ability to shift back into our power. And I guarantee you that probably 90% of the time, if not more, a boundary is a great place to start with that.
Mm. I agree with you. Definitely. That's a really strong point for sure. There's something that they are not addressing.
Yeah, and you brought up something great, Sana, about your nervous system. So I think it would be great for us to talk about like that connection to your body and the messages
Mhm.
that your body is sending. And I give an analogy to people that if we lived in a house that we couldn't leave, right? And there was an alarm or alarms going off all the time. If we can't leave, we're going to eventually tune them out, right? We're going to adjust to them. We're not even going to know they're going off. That's kind of what happens with trauma or things that
Mhm.
impact our body and our nervous system is that we got so used to it, we don't hear it anymore. So typically when people come to see me, I go, "Hey, Sana, there's an alarm going off," right? And we
Right, right.
is, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that, right? And then throughout the work, we go, "Hey, well, which alarm? And what is that alarm communicating, right? Is it the fire alarm? Is it the carbon monoxide alarm?" Well, very much in our nervous systems, feelings are just alarms. They're
Right,
a
right.
communication system going, "Hey, there's a need here." If we don't
Mhm.
have an emotionally attuned part of us on, we miss that. We just get
Right.
out of the feeling because it doesn't feel good.
Right. And hence the reason why people stay in unhealthy situations sometime because it becomes familiar or it's just, they don't listen to the alarms and they think it's the way it's supposed to be, or maybe it's too much of a fear to get out of it. So it's the same kind of thing.
Absolutely. And so, one feeling that we can identify here in our conversation is anger. Okay.
Hmm.
So sometimes, especially if we're spiritual, it's like we don't want to be an angry person. And if you have any trauma around angry, we don't want to be an angry person. Well, anger is one of your best friends if you know how to listen to it. Okay. Because it is telling you a boundary's been crossed.
Right. Right. It's a signal. It's a sign, right?
It's a sign. Now, it's not a sign that we react and respond from it, because odds are we're going to react and respond from a place that maybe isn't aligned in our integrity, or we might come through with an energy of anger and somebody might need to defend themselves against that. But it is the alarm to get curious.
Hmm.
I'm angry. I'm feeling resentful, because resentment is a really great indicator that you need a boundary.
Hmm. Absolutely.
You get
So
curious, could there be a boundary violation going on?
So what would somebody do if they start to feel that resentment build up or that anger? What could somebody do that's listening out there that might be going through something similar? what's the first thing they can do? You said to get curious. What else can they do to get into that mode?
Yeah, I think that getting curious as to where could there be a boundary violation. Okay. And then
Mhm.
getting really clear on what is that boundary violation. Wow, I didn't ask for that feedback and now I'm feeling judged. So then we go, all right, can I communicate that boundary? And sometimes the communication is with ourself. Like a lot of
Mhm.
times the boundaries are internal because
Right.
sometimes we have people in our life that don't have the consciousness or awareness to receive that invitation for a boundary. Hey, I'm going to ask you not to give me unsolicited advice. That's ideal. If you can do that with someone,
Mhm.
great, communicate it. You know what? I felt a little judged in that conversation, and I'm not really looking for unsolicited advice. In the future, it would be helpful if you just listened, if you just held space. But if
Right.
you know, because to me, trust, the definition
Mhm.
of that is data over time,
Right. Right.
collecting data. So if you have data that someone can't receive that, or it's going to go right over their head, or they're going to spin it around and throw it right back at you, then the boundary becomes internal. When I'm
Mhm.
around this particular person, I will not share anything that I don't want to be judged on or receive unsolicited advice.
Right. Yeah. It's very important to establish who you trust. I know that that's a big part of of what you do, the trust level. But when we worked together, I remember that when we were going through the boundaries and I was having a really hard time because I was being pressured. And obviously, some of us are too nice and we have a hard time setting those boundaries, right? I'm sure some of you can agree. But I think that you had said, how does your body feel right then and there? Because I feel it physically, right? Not everybody does, but they'll either get a signal intuitively or physically. And I would feel it. And you said that you have to do whatever keeps your nervous system calm, like whatever protects you. And then you decide if you make that, if you step out and you do talk or you do this or you accept something that what that's going to mean and how are you going to feel after you do that. So that really helped me because it took me a while. As you know, this, like you said earlier, this is not something you learn overnight, but it's a practice and I know you talk about your boundary practice, which we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a practice of having it be conscious every day throughout our lives and being very aware. So like self-awareness, and I'm sure you would agree, Robin, right? That self-awareness is the key to everything, well, personal growth, connection to self, everything. So I think that that's what really helped me is I really stopped and I thought, how do I feel? And do I want to move forward in this? Is this really healthy for me? And at the time, it wasn't healthy for me, a lot of it. And now, like, there's certain things that don't bother me. So as we heal, and I think you told me that over time, you get to build up your resistance. And then you also know when you can feel safe to, speak out to somebody or talk to somebody or whatever it may be. It takes time.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're talking about too is getting to know yourself on a deeper level. I think that really, in order to trust other people, we have to learn how to trust ourselves. Boundaries is
Yes.
a great practice, a great consistent practice to say, hey, I show up for myself when I need me.
Right. Right.
And so, some things that you might want to look out for as far as like feelings in your body is, are you feeling anxious around somebody?
Right. And I know that people listening, I know because I talk to people all the time, they get the anxiousness. So what can you tell us about that? People that do uh have that anxiety or they get that anxious feeling, what are some of the best things that you could, help them with?
Well, number one, pause. There's
Mhm.
not a greater intervention known to
Mhm.
me than a pause. Pause, breathe, take a deep breath. Uh, scan the room. What feels safe? What doesn't feel safe? Disclose less. Oh my, OMG. Listen, it does not hurt you to disclose less, to pause, to wait to disclose something to someone, to ask for more time to process. I have a very silly tactic for that or tool, which is just gently biting your tongue in your mouth. Like if it's somewhere that
Mm.
you typically over disclose or you kind of allow your anxiousness to allow you to impulsively react, because really what anxiousness does is it feels things first. Like if we run a little more anxiously, we feel something and it feels
Right.
uncomfortable. So we'll get right into our action.
Mhm. Mhm.
to manage the feeling. And the last thing we do is think. So logic is the last thing on board. That's why I've done it to myself. I've had clients go, "Why did I say that? Why did I do that?" And I'll say, "Because logic wasn't a part of your process."
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, no, I think this is all really helpful information. And as far as your boundary practice that because I've heard you say that in workshops that you've done that you have a boundary practice that you have, and is it just being more aware every day and consciously being aware of certain situations, or do you have a specific practice that you can talk about?
I wouldn't say it's like a specific practice. I mean, I think I have to be aware that I have to slow down in my own life to be aware, to
Hmm.
practice that self-awareness of
Yes, that's a
what,
good point.
what I'm even feeling in my body. But the system that I teach my clients is a practice that I use every day, which just allows you to kind of put people into categories, and then it dictates really how you show up and what kind of the principles are to keep you safe. And then I know we're probably approaching a break here, but something that we might want to pick up on after is managing guilt, because that was a huge part of my boundary practice,
Mm.
is how to manage that feeling.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. The guilt, the people that get caught up in people pleasing and feeling guilty about it, or if they want to do something for themselves, and feeling that obligation or that fear in many cases, right? So we will talk more about that, and maybe you can give us a couple of examples of setting boundaries in a situation where, I know there's a lot of people that struggle with family members, friends, sometime, of course, and in personal relationships. But, what are some of the things, the boundaries that they can have before they have to go to like a family function and see somebody? This comes up a lot. People have to see people. I've seen people seeing their exes, people seeing their family members, and it could be coworkers too. But, it's a little bit closer to home when it's family, right? So, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. And I know we're going to be coming up on a break here for a minute, but real quick before they cut to the break, I do want to know, how would you say that this has impacted your life, Robin?
I don't even know that there's words to describe it. I'm not the same person anymore. It impacted my anxiety, my depression. I feel like energetically, I vibe at a way higher vibration, and life is a lot more enjoyable and intentional versus haphazard. So, I mean, definitely, I love everything I teach, but this one specifically, it's universal. I mean, I think we're collectively shifting out of a lot of codependent dynamics, and
Right, right.
everybody could really use a little brush up on healthy boundary work.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's all about, doing things for yourself, self-care, boundaries, self-love, all of that. I did want to put out there, I wasn't sure if I was going to take any call-ins for the show, but I'm going to try it. I know I'm getting really gutsy here and trying this for my first show, but I am going to say if somebody has a question after the break and they would like to call in, the number is 888-346-9141. If you have a question regarding boundaries, and we'll try to answer that for you. This could be kind of fun, right?
Weren't we just talking about how passionate people? We're just so passionate. We're just gonna
We're
roll.
so passionate, we're just talking, and but I know that people, this is a really important thing. This is the first thing that I talk about when I coach my clients too, is just setting those boundaries. And a lot of the boundaries are with texts, like when to answer, when not to, if they're in a work atmosphere, when to email, when not to, to think first, or pause first before reacting, right? Responding instead of reacting, and thinking through, okay, do I need to answer this right now? And sometimes when people are going back and forth personally, and they're in maybe somewhat of an argument or something like that, wait, pause, take your time responding, right?
Absolutely. I think that nothing is urgent unless you're on fire.
What's that? Oh,
Nothing
yeah.
is nothing is urgent unless you're on fire.
Ah, that's a good one. That's a good
So
one.
everything, it's okay to pause. It's okay to, check in, and by
Yep.
all
Yep.
means, do it different. That's, if anybody can take anything from this conversation, do it differently than you normally do. See what happens.
Right. Right. And I know that you talked about earlier internal boundaries versus external or invitational boundaries, right?
Yeah.
How you describe them. So the internal is what? So that we can just explain that
Yeah.
to the listeners.
An internal boundary is you, understanding a boundary with yourself. it's not, if you don't want someone to continue to call you or be in relationship with you, that it's not, they better stop calling me. It's, I won't answer that call, or I
Mm-hmm.
won't engage with that person. So it's holding
Right.
you accountable to what you know you need to in order to feel safe.
Right. Okay. All right. So I think we are going to go to a break right now. And like I mentioned, if somebody wants to call in and ask a question, the number is 888-346-9141 here on Up Close and Empowered. And we will be back right after the break.
Welcome back to Up Close and Empowered with Sonna Johns. Have a question for Sonna or guests? Join us on the show at 888-346-9141. That's 888-346-9141. Now back to the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back from the break. We're talking with Robin Breckenridge, a life and relationship coach here on Up Close and Empowered. My name is Sonna Johns, and we are going to take a first call. And we are going to be hearing from Ron from Ontario, Canada. Ron, how are you today?
Oh, I'm very good, Sonna. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're real curious as to what your question would be. What can you, this is our first question, our first caller of the show, which is kind of special.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was listening there, and I liked what Robin said about, if someone gives you unsolicited advice, and basically I'm interested in knowing how to set that boundary. Basically, I have someone in my life that's my older brother, and my mom just passed away, and she left us some money. And from nowhere, he said, when that money comes, you should really, really think about putting that into your retirement fund. And I thought it was none of his business, but I didn't say anything. But I'm the youngest in my family, and there seems to be a pattern with my family, with me, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I just wondering how I can set better boundaries with them and maybe learn how to stick up for myself better.
Yeah, a great question. And Ron, my mom is from Ontario, Canada, and I'm actually in the process of getting my Canadian citizenship right now. So,
oh, that's amazing.
Love me a Canadian.
Well, welcome to Canada.
Thank you. So let me answer your question. And, all of these questions are individualized and complex. So I'm going to give you a generalized answer, and you are welcome to reach out to me via Instagram or the email if you want any further help with this. But unsolicited advice is no fun, and I think that the best way we can do it, because we don't necessarily want to create more conflict when we're asserting a boundary, is to just let someone know what's helpful. So in the future, if that topic gets brought up, you can just say, hey, what would be helpful is if you could just hold the space to listen, or actually, I'm not really looking for unsolicited advice or direction in what to do. One thing that I've practiced in my life, and this might apply for you, Ron, is a lot of times people that love us project their fear onto us, because we all have a very hard time watching people we love be uncomfortable or misuse their money or something like that. So oftentimes I've said to people, I'd prefer your faith, not your fear. Like, believe in me, believe that, I know what I'm going to do with this money, and that whatever happens with it, I'm going to learn the appropriate lesson. But I'm not really open to you projecting your fear onto me. Okay, that's one thing, but I think with your brother, it might just be, even if you want to get ahead of it, I had some time to think about it, and I know that you brought up this, what your opinion about what I should do with this money that I was left, and I'd really just love your support. I'm actually not looking for direction on that, but I appreciate your concern for your care.
Okay. Great. How does that sound, Ron? Does that help?
No, it sounds really good. Obviously they're concerned about me, and it probably comes from a place of, it's the way they do it is very, I guess, degrading, but it probably comes from a place of, concern, and that's understandable. So yeah, I think that answered my question pretty good. And I'm just going to keep, trying to stick up for myself. And like Robin had said earlier, just keep showing up for myself every day, and maybe like a muscle, I'll just keep practicing that.
And Ron, I'd even just relanguage sticking up for yourself to advocating for yourself, because sometimes we think we're doing it wrong if we're not like sticking up for ourselves and fighting back. And I think then all you're doing is engaging in the power dynamic, because you're feeling in the one down position with their advice, you know? So if you just realize that like, this is not helpful, and I'm going to go about the most kind and integral way of communicating that, then we're teaching them how to treat you.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
That sounds great.
Well, thank you, Ron. Thanks for calling in.
Okay. Thank you very much. You both have a great day.
You too. You too. Thanks. Okay. So I think we're good. So Robin, let's circle back to the guilt, obligation, fear, some of the things that the reasons why we don't set boundaries. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because I know people feel guilt, or they're even apprehensive to stand up or set a boundary because of the resistance that they're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, you know, generally speaking, we're talking about managing feelings. Like we would have to learn how to manage fear. Obligation to me is in the family of guilt. But specifically speaking, guilt is one of the biggest barriers to being able to assert boundaries. So I'm going to share with you my own practice that I use for managing guilt. And the first piece of that is to just define what guilt is communicating. So guilt is communicating. It's just letting you know, are you in your integrity or not, right? So a really easy way to remember that is that guilt means I did something bad. Okay, I don't really like the word bad, so I tend to relanguage that to I did something bad, or I'm sorry, I did something out of my integrity, not bad, but that's an easier way to remember it, okay? And so I'll add something when people feel guilt, I'll have them ask this kind of vetting question. Okay, did I do something bad by my standards? Because we can get really caught up that like, oh, my mom's standards or my brother's standards, but I want you to connect to your standards. So when we're talking about boundary work and you're setting a boundary and someone doesn't like it, because I'll tell you what, if you start setting boundaries in your life, you are going to very quickly learn who the boundary pushers are in your life and who is benefiting from you not.
Oh, yes.
Right?
For sure.
So if we ask that question, which I've had people, because listen, if you set boundaries and it's smooth sailing, you might not be completely in reality. Like it's not the easiest thing to shift into, right? So if you ask yourself like, okay, I don't want to go to that party or whatever it is, but I feel so bad. They went to my parties and it wouldn't be the end of the world, right? No, let me check in with this. Is this an authentic yes? Because there's a great quote. And a dishonest yes is a no to self. Meaning if we don't have an authentic yes, we're saying no to us.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. Does it feel authentic is a great question, a great self-check question to ask yourself, right?
Absolutely. It helped me so much. And it's not selfish to focus on yourself. It's saying I'm staying out of self-neglect and self-abandonment, because I'll tell you, I've been doing this for a minute now. There's a cost to that every single time.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So when you go back to that example, like, okay, no, it's not an authentic yes. I don't want to spend my Saturday night that way. I want to take care of myself that night. Then we go, okay, is not going to the party bad. Is me setting boundaries, is me taking care of myself, is me being honest bad by my most of the time. No, you're going to say, no, I don't want someone to come to my party out of guilt or, obligation or fear. I would support them, right? So like, that's where we ask that question. And then we can release the guilt. But I want to tell you, releasing guilt, especially if guilt has been a directional force in our relating, it's a practice. It's not going to be a one and done. That guilt might come back and tap you on the shoulder and go, but she came to your 30th, and you just go, am I doing something bad by my standards? No, taking care of myself is not bad. Okay, so the practice of guilt, like when we don't have that pause, I always let people know guilt is like someone putting their hand around your neck. It's usually not a place where we're going to go, I wonder what's going on. We're just going to try to breathe.
Right, right.
Okay, but if we know like, hey, hold on, this guilt isn't going to eat me alive. I'm not doing anything bad. Then we can learn how to manage it. And over time, that gets a lot easier.
Right. And then if you go against your authentic self of what you want to do, then you're really upset with yourself. You look back and you go, why did I do that? And then you start beating yourself up, and then you go in a downward spiral. And that's, it's not productive. So
No,
that's why it's so important to listen to ourselves.
and on the macro, we just didn't show up for ourselves. And if you think about building trust and is data over time, we're building trust with ourselves too, that says, hey, when I really need you, you push me into somebody's party on a Saturday night. So when,
Mm-hmm.
SHIT hits the fan, we're not really going to think we can handle anything. Oh, I don't show
Right.
up for myself. I don't have my own back. So these little micro things, they really end up
Mhm.
adding up in our data for how we show up for ourselves.
Right. And I want to segue into self-care and self-love. So, because boundaries does, have a lot to do with that, right? And what I mean is that I work with a lot of people, I know you do too, that they have a hard time. They feel guilt from not taking time out for themselves, taking the day off to go shopping, go on a nature walk, go to yoga class, whatever it may be. People really still struggle with that. They feel so much guilt and they're not taking care of themselves. And then over time, they start to feel resentment. They don't know why, but it's because they're not doing anything for themselves. So, what would be your suggestion for people that really have a hard time with taking that time out for themselves?
It's a hard one. I think you have to, understand that you matter, like on a bigger scale. And then on a smaller scale, I think that intention is really helpful. So for self care, scheduling it in, actually putting it into your calendar. I have a practice with my clients where I just have them set goals in different areas, like set an emotional goal, set an intellectual goal, a spiritual goal, a physical goal, so
Mhm.
that from a whole perspective, you're showing up and taking care of yourself. I'll tell you, self-care is not my default. Healthy boundaries is not my default. Self-esteem is not my default. I have to be intentional. So every day I write those goals out and I have it in my calendar and blocked out of my schedule.
Mhm.
That from, 9 to, or actually it's about 8:30 to 9:30. That's my time. I turn that phone off. I connect. I do the things that repair and restore my relationship to me. But I do think that boundaries is pretty much the ultimate form of self care, because if we don't have them, you're not really prioritizing the things that matter to you.
Mhm. True.
And
Right.
then, Sana, just on like a way bigger scale, I mean, we all have an inner child. All of
Mhm.
our children have
Mhm.
something that impacted us, because no one can meet all of our needs. And I know that I work a lot and I love what I do, which makes it so much easier to work a lot. And there was a time where I didn't eat. It was 7 p.m. and not because of any eating disorder. It's just because I didn't prioritize myself and I worked and I got off and the call and I went, gosh, would I do that to my son? Would I not feed him till 7? And I went, oh my gosh, if I did that, they would probably call Child Protective Services on me. And then I went, because that would be neglect. And then I thought about my own little inner child and I thought, my gosh, I'm not taking care of her. I'm not even feeding her until, and then I'm feeding her, something because I'm starving at 7 p.m. So really connecting back to that younger part of you, like even getting a picture of yourself as a child, putting it up somewhere that's high traffic, your bathroom mirror that you see it, and just connecting back to like your everything you're doing to that part too. And if you have neglect as a wound, then that little part of you is constantly in that over and over and over again. And if you think your nervous system will be regulated that way, it won't.
Right. And I am really glad that you brought up the inner child, because it's really tough to do a bypass, like spiritually bypass all of the things that we've gone through, especially in our early life. And you tell me your thoughts. I mean, just kind of throw it out there, but I feel like it's necessary to do the inner child work. Sometimes I feel that it might be overdone too. And again, you tell me your opinion. This is totally fine. I think that it's absolutely necessary for people to do it. And sometimes I think that maybe people catch on, or they get it a little bit sooner and they understand and they're able to release it and then move on. So what are your thoughts, like with people going through that process? Does it need to be, because a lot of people think, oh, if I go to a coach or I go to therapy or whatever, it's going to be forever that I'm talking about my past. But it's really not like that, is it?
No, and I mean, I can speak for the work that I do. I say we take a brief look in the rearview mirror because we need the context
Hmm.
to know what that part went through so that we can be the attuned parent to show up and take care of that child.
Yes, yes.
Even in my own journey, when I first started therapy a long time ago and that inner child concept came up, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyways, but until it was made relevant to me that it is boundary work and inner child work is by far, I believe, the most impactful work that you can
Hmm.
do to change your life in a positive way. So I'm all for it. I think that there's lots of stuff out there, and I'm so glad because now in mental health we're talking about so many different things. But I think more than anything, connecting to the right place of support that feels aligned with what you're looking to get is super.
Right. I agree. And I do want to talk about support for a minute. So I talked about earlier how I couldn't have done it without the support, the encouragement, all the guidance that I got. And I want people to know that. I mean, that's a lot of the reason why I'm doing this show, because I want people to know that there are support systems out there. There's coaches, there's therapists, there's community, there's church. I mean, whatever works for you, you find what works for you. And because it is really hard to do it alone. And let's face it, we have a little bit of a loneliness epidemic going on right now in this world since COVID, right? Things have kind of changed. Things are a little different. People are getting a little bit more adapted. A lot of people are going through the spiritual awakening process. That's also very isolating, which is a whole other show. But I think it's important that people have a support system. And I want everybody to know I am going to be getting my own Voice America email. And so for those of you that want to reach out and you're looking for someone to help you with a specific thing, I want to be a resource channel to be able to offer that information to you. It's really part of what I want to do with this show. So I'm glad I got that out there. But I also want Robin for you to tell me how everybody can get a hold of you. I mean, we have a few more minutes, but I want to talk a little bit about some of your workshops that you do and some of the initiatives that you might have coming up. What's your future look like for Robin? So just kind of give us an overview.
Yeah. So easiest way probably to find me is on Instagram. My handle is Coach with Robin. I post something every day, either on my feed or my stories that's supplemental material to what I teach and just high vibes. So feel free to follow me on that. I do have a workshop coming up at the end of the month. It's a masterclass for boundaries. It's $100. It's probably the best $100 you'll spend, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn,
I'd
but
say.
I
Hmm.
like to be effective in what I deliver.
Hmm.
And it's through the organization that Sonna and I are both a part of called the She Hive. So that is limited only to women or people who identify as women. If you are a man and you're listening, you are welcome to email me or DM me on Instagram if there's something that I can put together. I'm happy to do that. Right now, I do have a wait list to see clients individually, but I still encourage you to reach out. I believe in divine timing and that if we are supposed to work together, the right time will find us. And if you are looking for support right now, I have really great referrals that I can send people to. So do not hesitate to reach out. I know you mentioned talking about like a scenario, maybe with a family dynamic. Do you want me to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about that. We do have a few more minutes left, and I think that's important. People do want to know how to handle a situation like that.
I think Ron brought a little family dynamic in, but
Hmm.
I think that it is universal. There's a great Ram Dass quote that says, "If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family." And I don't think that means that our family are bad, but we are all kind of assigned to roles in our family. There tends to be sometimes dysfunction or people who are activating in the system. So very quickly, let's just set a rule. This is kind of a principle in boundaries. You either trust somebody or you don't. Okay. So there is no kind of, when I teach categories, sometimes people will say, well, where's the kind of trust category? And I'm like, well, I don't do the kind of trust category because it's blurry and we're looking for clarity in this work. So number one, out identifying, do I trust this person? Are they consistent? Do I feel safe around them? And if it's a no, then really where we're at is we have a shared interest with that person. And the shared interest in this particular example is family. We're in the same family. Okay. So what I would suggest is if you're going to a family event or you're just like, wow, this conversation turned on some lights and I want to show up differently to the next family event, number one, just write out what boundaries do you want to have in this event that you're going to. Be intentional. And the way you can really look at it is, what do I do? What do I want to stop doing? What do I not want to do with this person anymore? I don't want to let them give me unsolicited advice, right? So just outline what you want to stop doing. And then you want to think about it. Do I need to communicate this boundary, or is it an internal boundary? And if I need to communicate it, there's so many wonderful things on Google. Email me. I'm happy to help out. We can figure out a way for you to communicate it in a healthy way. And then this one is really important. Create a list of safe things that you can talk about when you're there, or safe things you can do with these people. Never underestimate a game. Sometimes that's not safe, depending on your family. But identify, I can talk to them about sports, TV shows, the weather, maybe not politics. There's some ones that, historically are not the safest topics, but I can't stress enough how important it is to be specific and then reference back to those. And when you get off topic or something comes up that's activating, direct the conversation back, and know at any point, change the conversation, leave, or end the conversation.
Great. Robin, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout your life so far?
Ooh.
What can you share quickly before we end the call today? What is the
the
biggest thing?
biggest lesson that I have ever learned, and I continue to learn, is that I am enough.
Awesome. I love that.
I didn't know that before. And every day I prove that to myself a little bit more, and that I matter and that I am worth keeping myself safe.
I love that. I am enough, which is a great affirmation, right? So what's the future for you? What are you looking to do? What's the next chapter for you with your work? Any aspirations or anything that we need to know?
Let's put it out in the universe. I'm putting together right now a little bit more of a system to take more people through. I'm starting to train other coaches so that I can impact more people than the availability of time that I have right now. I would love to write a book. I'd love to be a guest on your show again.
Yes. What would you name the book? What would you name it?
Oh my goodness.
Any ideas?
I have an idea of a book, but it wouldn't be my first book, which would just be The Art of Keeping It Light. So many of us don't know how to show up in relationships and keep it light and not go deep or need that depth. And that's a lot safer. So at some point, I believe I'll write a book. I don't know if it'll be my first one, but
I love it. Okay. Robin, thank you so much for being here today. This has been fun. And yes, I'd love to have you back and maybe do a whole Q&A sessions, relationships, all kinds of stuff. So let's think about that. Let's manifest it, right? And I just want to thank you for being here today. Thank you, all of you, for listening. I appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed the show, and join me next week on Up Close and Empowered, the same time. And we're going to be talking to a business mindset, energy, and manifestation coach. And she is really good when it comes to life balance. So be sure to join me next week. Thank you again, everybody. And be sure to set a boundary this week. Pick something that you can challenge yourself with and set a boundary. Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonna. Thank you, everybody. Go have some boundaries.